Hi, thank you so much for taking the time to have a look at my videos and like them and share them. I really appreciate you listening through all the ramblings of a crazy person because I know they were a bit raw, but I really wanted to just get straight onto doing some videos so I could really get talking to some other people that may be in the same situation as me, get my confidence up and um, really in an aim to do some more research and talk about some things that are a lot more important really, but needed some more time working on them. So today I really wanted to discuss the fact that when I post activism pictures on my Facebook or my Instagram, I really like to think about what I'm posting before I post it. So I don't just see an image and share and spam everybody with these images. I think about what they portray and whether I think that they are showing a good comparison or something like that. If they're showing a picture of one thing and another and saying, would you do this? Do they resonate with people? So ones I post quite a lot about are the dairy industry, because that is something to me that before I was vegan, I was a vegetarian, and I really did not realize how horrific the dairy industry is. And that shocked me, and it's something I know a lot of people ask me more questions about, and I just wanted to make sure I was really fully informed on what was the process of the dairy industry is. Not because it means that I may or may not go give up dairy and be a vegan, because I just am. And it's more for the fact that for my peace of mind, I like to know everything about something. A bit like a horror movie. I'd rather the ones that you don't fully see everything are more scary than the ones where you see everything. And even though the process is hideous and is scary whether you see it or not, at least I know and I'm doing something about it, rather than not fully understanding and making up part of it in my head, or even making up part of it when I speak to other people. I don't want to say something and then they contradict me and I don't even know myself if I'm making something up, or if I'm telling the truth. And I know a few of my friends who have contacted me recently have asked me a few questions or clarification on things, and with regards to the dairy farming industry, and things that their colleagues or other friends have contradicted about what I've posted. So I wanted to do a good amount of research, and I've posted below all the links to the documents or sites or organisations that I looked at to find out what I'm going to talk about today. So I just wanted to go through the start to end process of a dairy cow mother, and what that entails for her, and what the process. Dairy cows are specifically bred to produce milk and high yields of milk. So the way that farmers can encourage more milk to be produced would be to feed them a really high nutrient dense diet. So rather than them being free range and eating grass and getting the fibre that they require, they give them all these nutrients so that they produce higher yielding of milk. They also will sort of select the higher yielding ones and keep their calves as ones to breed from for more dairy cows over other ones, so that they get higher yielding cows being bred, so that eventually some natural selection of higher yielding dairy cows. But at 15 months of age, the dairy cow will be ready to be raped. So this means that they will be inseminated with the sperm of a masturbated bull. So the bull is also raped, because either by farmers or by like a mechanical aid to take the semen from them, and then to them use themselves insert that into the female cow's uterus. So they are put into actually like a crate or a holding cell for this, which a lot of farmers actually call a rape rack. So it's not like we've used a word that isn't completely normally used in the dairy industry. They aren't naturally producing their young. So after 9 months of carrying their baby or their calf, they give birth. So like us, they've carried that in their womb for 9 months. Within 24 to 48 hours after giving birth, the calf will be removed. So in this time, if they're male, they're normally shot immediately. because they're a surplus. In 2019, 95,000 male calves were shot immediately after birth, because they're not being raised for meat, because that's another part of the industry. They're just a surplus. They want the female calves to produce milk, and they want those to raise those. If they're not shot immediately in the head, they are taken to either be raised as veal or to be raised in the meat industry. So this means that they are put into metal transportation vehicles for long periods of time. So this could be hours, this could be days of no food, no water, terrified, some really newly born, some 24 or 48 hours old, all shoved in there until they get to a veal farm where, luckily, I would say luckily, we no longer do veal crate rearing. So they're not put into little crates anymore. So people think that means it's okay. Or I do hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, I wouldn't eat veal because the rest of the industry is so much better. But they're now put in separate sort of holding pens. So it's usually like a tin shed that quite often they outgrow before they're allowed to be removed from those, and that scrapes all their backs and causes them injuries. But as long as they're able to turn around, that's supposed to be sufficient until they're about 18 to 20 weeks old, and then they will have their throats cut and will be used for veal. If they aren't veal and they're raised for the meat industry, about 18 months of age, they will be killed and eaten for burgers and mince. Female calves will be processed again to be raised as dairy cows. So they get to go through the same hell as their mother. They are normally also kept in pens big enough for them to be able to turn around until they're 15 months of age, to then be raped and start the process again. So these pens again are small, calling out for their mothers, usually not big enough for those that try and stand out in the shelter of them and scrape them. So they have that exact same process. Dairy cows will continue this process of rape, and then the babies being removed and taken from them, when they normally would keep their calves with them and feed them up until 3 years old. So they having them take away at that short age is not natural at all, and they will normally continue this process to 3 to 5 years of age, because that's when they yield the most amount of milk, and then they're called spent dairy cows. So at this point they're not of use anymore, because they're not producing the milk that needs to be sold to make the money. So at this stage they will be sent to a slaughterhouse for spent cows, because they're not raised for meat. Not many slaughter houses want to use them for anything except for dog food or things like that, because they're not high quality anymore, because they're probably emaciated and have infections and things like that. So at this point they also go into the transportation trucks, which especially in the summer and things like that can be really hot and scary for hours on end, to be taken to a slaughterhouse and then killed, which we'll talk about in more detail later. So normally cows can live up to 20 to 25 years of age. These will be killed at 3 to 5 years age. While they are milking dairy cows, they unfortunately they get a lot of milking injuries. Lameness is really common in the dairy industry. About 70 out of 100 cows get lameness from different arising from different problems. Their hooves get infected or ulcerated from dirty flooring, standing for prolonged periods of time, and on hard floors. In the sheds that they're kept in, they're walking around on their own feces all the time, so any sores or cuts or ulcers they do have are going to get infected in this sort of way. Another condition they suffer from is mastitis. So this is inflammation of their udders from over milking. The machines that are used can sometimes irritate them and cause these infections and irritation to the, and also maybe the bedding or the situation they're living in, lying on those dirty feces covered floors or bedding, is going to get infection into these sore areas. So muscle damage after calving, they can get nerve damage from being overcalved really, or having too many babies, and this can mean that they can't stand up properly. So it's general practice, but if they're still able to yield enough milk and not waste it, is to shackle their feet together so that they can't lie down properly or move their legs apart, so that they can still stand for those prolonged periods that they're required to. So the shackles can then also dig into their feet and cause them discomfort and cause infection. Cows are also dehorned from an early age. They do this by sawing them off or using like a tough wire to cut through it. They then have to cauterize the wound because it keeps bleeding, because it's painful, and that then can have infections as well because of its open wounds on their heads. This is to prevent them from hurting other cows in the stalls that they're in. So when they are all being milked together, they don't want them hurting each other, or when they're all cramped into the sheds together, they don't want them causing damage, because obviously then that's a loss of money. Diarrhea as well, that's prevalent in dairy farming because of the high nutrient food that they give them. They're missing out on the fibre that they require from eating the grass. So this then means that they keep getting diarrhea because they're not getting the fibre that they should do to from the grass that they normally would eat from their normal diet. This then means that they have sore, irritated bums that then aren't cleaned or looked after properly, and then infections come from there. Because of all these different infections that so many of them get, then obviously the use of antibiotics is really high in any sort of farming, because they want to obviously treat the condition so then they can continue to provide milk. A lot of farmers will get prescribed antibiotics from their vet to give to the cows before they even get infections, to try and encourage anything that does happen. So if they get these sores that are still hurting, or this mastitis that still hurts them, that they won't get infected before when they get these inevitable injuries or damage to them. So the meat or the milk and everything that you're having will have this antibiotics that is given to them routinely. So it might be worth you having a little bit look at the next epidemic of intolerance to antibiotics in the human being. UK has banned the growth hormone, but they haven't banned the reproductive hormone. So they can still give this to cows to encourage them to keep calving, keep producing milk. So there is this hormone that shouldn't be there being pumped into these poor cows as well, which is coming through in your milk. But what about organic farming? So I get asked about this a lot, and I know a lot of people, especially where I live, there's a lot of local, because local's obviously going to be better. Just because they kill them closer to you or they abuse them closer to you makes that a better situation. You can call yourself an organic farmer, but you have to be certified by the Soil Association to be have the honour of actually boasting that you're a organic farmer. So organic farming, if you are certified, means that the cows have to, or are allowed to, be outside for 250 days of the year. They have to produce 20% less yield of milk a year than intensive farming. They are not allowed to have any routine antibiotics, and they have to have a 100% organic diet. The only thing is with this is none of these things are any better, because they will still be slaughtered at the end of their 3 to 5 year milk yielding lifetime. A lot of the farmers that have these farms will then not treat conditions that they've got that they need to be with antibiotics, because they don't want to have their license revoked. So if you want to maybe have a little look at Coombe Farm in Somerset and the footage of what goes on there, and see how nicely treated these animals are in an organic farm, and their milk goes, so these organic farms go to Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's, and you'll see from this footage that even though the abuse still continues in there, in horrible. They're beaten. Some of them were masturbated or sexually assaulted. And when the Soil Association was notified of this, they said they were very disappointed, and so did Waitrose and Marks and Spencers, but they didn't close it down. So it might be worth having a little look at the articles on that, because that's just showing you where you're getting your local milk from. It still means that they get raped. It still means that they get killed after 3 to 5 years, and it still means that the male calves are shot after birth because they are still a surplus. And I think it's stated on there, unfortunately, this is just a side effect of farming and is inevitable. So all those babies still die, still get shot in the head after they've been stolen from their mothers. So that's no better. Not that any of this process is better at all in any degree. Also, it's really interesting to read some of these organic farms and how they like to describe how they farm for the cow and the well-being of the cow, and not for the milk. It's not about the milk, it's about the cow. And one of my local dairy organic farms like to boast on their page about what they do and don't do, and it's an absolute joke reading it, the fact that they actually teach them to be separated over more prolonged time. So they still get to live with the cows get to live with their babies, or the mothers get to live with their babies for 3 years, but they separate them more and more over time so that they can get more milk from so they can take more of the milk, and the cows get used to being separated. I actually read that it said it's more upsetting for us to hear their cries all through the night than it is for them. I mean, that alone, why would you want to say that as a benefit that's better than intensive farming? They still get killed, and it was just horrendous to read what they thought was better farming methods or more humane. So once both the organic and inorganic mothers are spent, they also get put into one of the big transport trucks, um, sent away to these slaughterhouses that deal with spent cows, because they're usually not very many of them, so they might have to travel again hours or days, no water, no food, because they're not money making meat industry cows for slaughter. They're spent cows that are going to be used for dog food and baby food and things like that. So they will get, this is the part where they get killed. So I thought it was a good idea. I looked at the Humane Slaughter Association, and I thought I'd read to you what it says. If an animal is protected from unavoidable pain or suffering, to achieve this, the animal must be effectively restrained and then stunned, rendering it insensible to pain, and finally bled rapidly and profusely to ensure death before recovery could occur. If stunning method does not cause instantaneous insensibility, the stunning must not cause fear, pain, or other unpleasant feelings. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So from a lot of videos, if you want to have a look at Earthlings, that will show you UK footage, because I know a lot of people say, yeah, but that's not in the UK. Oh, that's not our country. But that's UK footage of the fact that the stunning method is so difficult to do, to get right, because the cows are frightened and they obviously can smell death like many animals can. They don't want to go into these holding pens with men covered in blood trying to put a stick at them that's coursing with electricity. So they are stabbed. I think they try and get them in the back of the head to stun them, but most often they miss because cows are large animals and don't want to have this done to them. If they can't do it properly, then they'll just grab the leg, hook them up onto the sort of conveyor belt hooking machine so they go round, and then their throats will be slashed with a knife and then bled. So most of them are still alert and aware of this happening. So how is that humane? And if you want to say something humane killing, the only way I can think of a humane killing is putting an animal to sleep. So killing an animal through an injection that puts them to sleep slowly because they are in pain, not because I want to eat them. So we can't use that method on cows because the injection, the chemicals that are used would be then in the meat and wouldn't be safe for human consumption. So the only way to do it is to physically stab them to death. And that is the only that is the way it's done. I have seen a video, I think it was from the UK, of a humane slaughterhouse. So they believe that they do it the best way they can. And what they do is they get the cow to go into like a little holding cell, so they're completely pinned. Someone shoots them in the side of the head, and that doesn't actually kill them, it just stuns them, so their brain almost rattles around in their head, and then goes round to the other side and shoots them again in the other side. The side then comes up of the crate, and then they fall out down on the floor, and then you can cut their throat and let them bleed out. Unfortunately, they still have to wait and smell and hear the cries of the animal being put into there before they go in there. That I'm sure being shot in the head and not dead, so being stunned enough before I get the second bolt, isn't really any more humane than being killed. Well, it's just not humane because they don't want to die. They can live till 25 years old. They can live with their families in herds, and we're killing them for a burger. And so, really, there's no humane way to kill an animal that doesn't want to die, or kill anything that doesn't want to die. I hope that was informative, and sort of clarifies to you exactly what does happen. So when the next person says to you this or that doesn't happen, then you will have that information to fall back on, because it's not just me saying this. I have listed below all the places where this come, and some of this information has come from the Farmers Association as well. So it's not like I've just taken one-sided information and one-sided research and given that to you. I've looked at all aspects, and even farmers won't disagree with the process. They just don't think there's anything wrong with the process. I read on the Farmers Association, I think it was 18 myths debunked, when they said that the cows aren't scared. And their answer was, there's been no proof to say cows are scared. There's been no proof to say that people are scared. I say the word scared, but you don't see it physically. I can't give you my scared and you can look at it and go, yeah, that is the scared piece of chunk that you just gave me, so I know you're telling the truth. I can only explain to you. Another way I would explain to you, if say I was maybe I was having a ventilator in and I was frightened, would my eyes go wide? Would I look terrified? Because that's what these animals do. If you see any of these videos of them in the trucks or before they're about to be killed, their eyes are wide, they are frightened, they make noises, they cry, they scream out. So I don't really know what sort of proof they're hoping to get about an animal being scared, because I'm sure they know when their dog or their cat is scared of something or tries to run away. That's definitely another way. I'm sure these cows don't go in voluntarily. I also wanted to say, which I missed earlier actually, a lot of another thing they raised on this Farmers Association was cows don't want to be milked. If they don't, and they said if they don't like this process, why do they keep queuing to come back in to be milked? Well, the reason for this is because they're so high yielding in the milk that they produce, and they're being over milked, they're carrying so much weight it's uncomfortable. Almost like when you have a baby and your breasts get really heavy and your baby cries and it's painful because you need to give them that milk. Well, they feel exactly the same way, but they can't give it to their baby, so they queue up because they know that then they'll at least get that relief. And also they'll be given all this food because they can't just eat when they want to. So of course they're going to queue up for that. It's almost like the Holocaust, when people would queue for their food. They don't actively just decide to die because it's easier to. They still want to live. So if they know they're going to get fed and milked and the relief is going to happen, that's almost a willingness to live, isn't it? So that is why they queue to go in and get milked. Really appreciate you listening. Please like and share this and help others to understand exactly what happens in this terrible industry. Thank you.